and good morning all. We are on to starting the book of Numbers of our Genesis to Revelations daily Bible study. Remember, it is mainly be covering the things needed for salvation. Not every knowledgeable thing about the Bible we need to know, and that is one of the cases of the book of Numbers. So just to put us in the perspective of where Numbers fits in the book of Bible, we are now under the fourth of the 5 books of the Bible called the Torah. The ones of which God himself, in a sense, speaks directly to Israel, or the congregation of Israel, even though it was through Moses. Genesis was the ancestry and formation of Israel from Abraham, Noah, son of Abraham, from Adam, Noah, Abraham, Jacob. Exodus was the birth of Israel, God's firstborn and only nation, firstborn son, as he calls him, out of the 70 direct descendants of Jacob's household, inclusive of the servants that went into Egypt. That son, that group, congregation of Israel, or God's my people, as he calls them, being redeemed out of Egypt for the purpose of going to serve him in a new promised land. He taught them the ways of God, the ways of their ancestors. Remember, Abraham kept God's laws, commands, and statutes, and so on. That way of life consisting of a group of laws, plural, which the Bible commonly puts in the singular, law, especially in the New Testament. Things to do or not to do, which I called part A for basic understanding, and then how to get God's forgiveness for breaking any of those part A, which I called part B. That was the tabernacle system, which he set up from Exodus chapters 25 to 31, 32, or so on. Now, it's basically similar to being taught how to drive a car, or how to live in harmony with others. So, if the car develops a fault, or the harmony of society gets a fault, a manual tells the car person how to fix the problem. Or in the case of a harmony of society breaking down, a judge restores a harmony, which sometimes mean the guilty party paying a penalty. So we have parts A and part B. In Numbers, God is now going to make them into an army to march to the land he promised to them, and on the way fight any opposition as well as those inhabiting the land when they get there. Numbers is the events of that journey. God first referred to Israel as an army before they were formed into this army. In Exodus chapter 6:26, he says, These are that Aaron and Moses, to whom Yahweh said, Bring out the children of Israel from the land of Egypt according to their armies. Also in Exodus chapter 7 verse 4, he said, But Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that I may lay my hand upon Egypt and bring forth mine armies, and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. Those judgments were the plagues. We shall also see the reason for driving out the present inhabitants of the promised land where they go in was because of those inhabitants' sinful ways. He said to Abraham, for example, in Genesis chapters 15-16, But in the 4th generation, they, talking about Abraham's descendants who went into Egypt, they shall come here again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So the Amorites were terrible people, they're going to sin even more, and God will drive them as well as others out. The same thing we read at the end of Leviticus, that he said he would do to Israel if they too wandered far from keeping his ways. Now the rest of the Bible, after the 5th book, which we're going to read after Numbers, which is Deuteronomy, those rest of the books would detail their breach, that's Israel's breach of the covenant, of Exodus chapters 24 verses 4 to 7. And God doing exactly what he said he would do, scatter them and so forth. Then finally sending them a Messiah, Yeshua, in the New Testament, some call Jesus, to reunite them back to the promised land and under one faith, one king, one leader. Okay, so that's the background to Numbers, and we'll now start on Numbers chapters 1 verse 1.
Actually, before we do that, just to give you a New Testament scripture that talks about reconciliation. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 18 speaks saying, "And all things are of God, who hath reconciled us unto himself by Yeshua, and hath given to us the ministry of reconciliation." Another one is Ephesians chapters 2 verse 16. So that's the whole purpose of the Messiah come, to reconcile us back to God, all the sinners and so forth, especially the tribe, the children of Israel who had transgressed his laws. He's not about giving some unholy Gentiles a new way of life, a new grace, or any of that kind of stuff that Christians misunderstand the Bible to mean. Yes, okay, Numbers chapters 1 verse 1.
And Yahweh spake unto Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tabernacle of the congregation, on the first day of the second month, in the second year after they were come out of the land of Egypt, saying, Take you the number of all the congregation of the children of Israel, after their families, by the house of their fathers, with the number of their names, every male by their polls, from 20 years old and upwards, all that are able to go forth to war in Israel. Thou and Aaron shall number them by their armies. And with you there shall be a man of every tribe, every one head of the house of his fathers. Even all they that, I'm going to jump all the way down to verse 4 to 6 now. Even all they that were numbered were 600,000 and 3,550. In other words, 603,550. So this is the following month to the tabernacle being set up, before they really set out on their journey to the promised land. God waited for the first day, Exodus chapter 40 verse 17, and it came to pass in the first month, in the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was raised up. So again, we are now in the second month, in the second year. Okay, now.
Note, every male over 20 years of age was included in the army. Of course, the servants would also go with the natural Hebrews. They were arranged and went according to the household's name, under the leadership of the head of the house. Just as Abraham was the head of his house when he took his 318 trained men to rescue Lot. The congregation, as seen as one, Hebrew and non-Hebrew, would be part of the army. This is the following month to the tabernacle being set up, before they really set off on their journey to the promised land. God waited for the first day. Exodus chapter 40 verse 17 says, "And it came to pass in the first month, in the second year of the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was reared up."
Okay, Numbers 1:47. But the Levites, after the tribe of their fathers, were not numbered among them. For Yahweh had spoken unto Moses, saying, Only thou shalt not number the tribe of Levi, neither take the sum of them among the children of Israel. But thou shalt appoint the Levites over the tabernacle of the testimony, and over all the vessels thereof, and over all things that belong to it. Verse 51. When the tabernacle setteth forward, the Levites shall take it down. And when the tabernacle is to be pitched, the Levites shall set it up. And the stranger that cometh near shall be put to death. And the children of Israel shall pitch their tents, every man by his camp. Verse 53. But the Levites shall pitch round about the tabernacle of testimony, that there be no wrath upon the congregation of the children of Israel, and the Levites shall keep the charge of the tabernacle of the testimony. Now chapter 2 deals with the tribal arrangements of the camp. I'm just going to read one verse, which is verse 2. Every man of the children of Israel shall pitch by his own standard with the ensign of their father's house, far off about the tabernacle of the congregation shall they pitch. So the ensign is like a banner to represent their house. Okay, Numbers chapter 3. This deals with the duties of Levites and the redemption of the firstborn son. Remember, this is just a little bit of background knowledge because the study is really to do with what we need to do for salvation. Numbers chapter 3 verse 1. These also are the generations of Aaron and Moses in the day that Yahweh spake with Moses in the Mount Sinai. And these are the names of the sons of Aaron, Nadab the firstborn, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. These are the names of the sons of Aaron, the priests which were anointed, whom he consecrated to minister in the priest's office. And Nadab and Abihu died before Yahweh, that was Leviticus chapter 10, for offering strange incense, when they offered strange fire before Yahweh in the wilderness of Sinai, and they had no children. And Eleazar and Ithamar ministered in the priest's office in the sight of Aaron their father. Verse 10. And thou shalt appoint Aaron and his sons, and they shall wait on their priest's office, and the stranger that cometh near shall be put to death. Verse 12. And I, behold, I have taken the Levites from among the children of Israel, instead of all the firstborn that openeth the matrix among the children of Israel. Therefore the Levites shall be mine, because all the firstborn are mine. For on the day that I smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, I hallowed unto me all the firstborn in Egypt, both man and beast. Mine shall they be. I am Yahweh. Verse 15. Number the children of Levi and the house of their fathers by their families, every male from a month old and upward shall thou number them. Verse 17. And these were the sons of the Levi by their names, Gershon and Kohath and Merari, all that were numbered of the Levites, which Moses and Aaron numbered at the commandment of Yahweh throughout their families. All the males from a month old and upwards were 22,000. And Yahweh said unto Moses, number all the firstborn of the males of the children of Israel from a month old and upwards, and take a number of their names. And thou shalt, verse 41, and thou shalt take the Levites for me, I am Yahweh, instead of all the firstborn among the children of Israel, and the cattle of the Levites, instead of all the firstlings among the cattle of Israel. Chapter 4. This is more duties for the Levites. Verse 1 reads, And Yahweh spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, Take the sum of the sons of Korath from among the sons of Levi after their families by the house of their fathers. Chapter 4, verses 3, 23 and 30. I'm just going to read to make this point. From 30 years old and upwards, even unto the 50 years old, all that enter into the host to do the work in the tabernacle of the congregation. So it has to be 30 years between a certain age, 30 and 50. So here we have age of 20 for war, age of a few months for the Levites, for the firstborns to be redeemed, and then the priests from 30 years old up until 50 years old. And this is why Yeshua was called at 30 years old, and some of the prophets were also called at 30 years old. Numbers chapter 4 verse 4. This shall be the service of the sons of Korath in the tabernacle of the congregation about the most holy things. Verse 15. And when Aaron and his sons have made an end of the covering of the sanctuary and all the vessels of the sanctuary, as the camp is to set forward, after that the sons of Korath shall come to bear it, but they shall not touch any holy thing, lest they die. These things are the burden of the sons of Korath in the tabernacle of the congregation. Now later we shall read, there was a descendant of Korath who did touch the ark and died in the times of David. Okay, Numbers 4:34. And Moses and Aaron and the chief of the congregation numbered the sons of Korathites after their families, and after the house of their fathers, from 30 years old and upwards, even unto 50 years old, every one that entereth into the service for the work in the tabernacle of the congregation. And those that were numbered of them by their families were 2,750. Verse 37. These were they that were numbered of the families of the Koranites, all that might do service in the tabernacle of the congregation. So as I said, the reference to the story I talked about is 2 Samuel chapter 6 verse 7, where Uzzah touched the ark and God killed him for breaking this instruction. Continuing from verse 38. And those that were numbered of the sons of Gershon throughout their families and by the house of their fathers, from 30 years old and upwards, even unto 50 years old, every man that entereth into the service for the work in the tabernacle of the congregation, were 2,630. Verse 42. And those that were numbered of the families of the sons of Merari throughout their families by the house of their fathers, from 30 years old upwards, even unto 50 years old, every one that entereth into the service for the work of the tabernacle of the congregation, were 3,200. Verse 46. All those that were numbered of the Levites, whom Moses and Aaron and the chief of Israel numbered, after their families and after the house of their families, from 30 years old and upwards, even unto 50 years old, every one that came to do the service of the ministry and the service of the burden in the tabernacle of the congregation, even those that were numbered of them were 8,560. Shalom, until we meet again for our further studies tomorrow, God willing.